Hi, I'm Lucy Duggan, and I'm going to read from this brilliant book by Eva von Redecker, Revolution für das Leben, or Revolution for Life, a philosophy of the new forms of protest. I'm going to read from the first chapter, which is all about our modern idea of property. When we imagine nature, or when we actually go outdoors, we see a landscape which has been divided up. Hedges, embankments, and fences separate individual fields and meadows from each other. Forests have edges, and ditches have clear contours. In a way, property has grown into the world. In his discourse on inequality, the philosopher Jean-Jacques Rousseau lamented the fact that fences existed at all. In 1775, he wrote that humanity would have been saved a lot of suffering if the first man who, after enclosing a piece of ground, took it into his head to say, "This is mine," had been stopped. Like many critical thinkers since, Rousseau wanted to understand why European societies cause harm, even when they follow supposedly enlightened ideals. Greed and enclosure seemed to him to be important factors. However, he made the mistake of equating the way in which his own contemporaries thought of property with the idea of property itself, as if all fences always meant the same thing. But they don't. Rousseau's critique of civilization as a whole is not precise enough. So when we run up against fences, it's worth taking a closer look at what they're made of. I grew up with a story about the enclosure of an estate which later belonged to my father's ancestors for a while. It's the story of Stutenberg, which translates as Mare's Hill. In the 15th century, the region of Ermland, which had previously been colonized by the Teutonic Knights, was placed under the sovereignty of the Polish-Lithuanian crown, following the 13 Years' War. The king rewarded one knight for his distinguished service by giving him as much land as he could ride around in one day. The knight rode out in the morning at a full gallop from a small hill and returned in the evening to the same place, where his horse collapsed under him and died. Hence the name Mare's Hill. I was always confused that people told this story in a tone of triumph. Why should that guy get an estate? How could the last few acres of swampy land be more valuable than his best mare? Why wasn't the story about a man who lost his way? But in this exact form, the story can help us understand the oddities of modern property. The first peculiarity can already be seen in the fact that the circle has to be closed, because it's only when something is clearly enclosed that it becomes controllable. We have to be able to distinguish what's part of it and what isn't. Plenty of things, like land and natural resources, do not have a clearly defined or self-contained form. Unlike a horse or an apple, they do not offer an obvious way of knowing what the property consists of. Even natural borders, such as rivers or mountain ranges, have to be defined as such. And in fact, even horses have to be defined in some ways. They're sold with a halter, because a horse which cannot be held is a bit too much of a flight risk. If today's landscapes seem to be divided clearly into different fields, then the hedges and embankments reflect their century-long treatment as property. Nature only took on this form gradually. It was not naturally like this, but was shaped by countless moments, such as the enclosure described in the story of the knight.